He heard about the American soldiers who worked in a coal mine, and they were crying and talked to each other, and he heard about that. It was north part.
좌우간 탄광 광산인데.
So there are lots of places, and there are some places that are prohibited to go inside. He met a worker from that place, and he was saying that there were tall people, few tall people, and I walked to them, and they had American Western looking. So they told the worker that please tell to the American about us, that so that we can escape from here. He doesn't know about the town, but when he heard about that, it was 20 years ago. But the worker said that it's right before the border has settled. Between South Korea and North Korea.
Can you describe what they looked like, or if you knew any of their names, what they said?
He was saying that they were just tall and very skinny because they could not eat enough food, and he's guessing that they are already dead because they had to work hard.
And one final question. Has he brought this information to America, to the Army or our embassy?
He?
Yes.
When he heard about this, he heard about this information, and then he just escaped from North Korea, so he doesn't know any information about later on. So he was kidnapped to the North Korea. Yeah, he was driving fishing boat. And 1970,
4월 29일
April 29th, he was kidnapped.
02시 30분.
At 2 a.m. And for 30 years, he was trained to spy. And
졸업하고 바로 사회로 나왔다.
he was educated to be a spy, and then he graduated from the school, and then he came to South Korea.
The last clip was of Jae-Kun Lee, who I got a chance to speak to at Gangwa Island. For years, and still to an extent, North Korea has had a much more aggressive policy of kidnapping Japanese families, South Korean fishermen, and really anybody. They kidnapped a lot of Lebanese people, a lot of people from, several people from Thailand at least, because from 2008 to 2018, at least 79 South Korean prisoners of war that were captured around the same timeline have managed to escape. You can only imagine if they captured hundreds of Americans, because hundreds of Americans are unaccounted for in that war, maybe one or two is still alive. Jae-Kun Lee's report was secondhand, so he saw this through a friend who claimed that he saw it, but I don't believe he's lying, because one of the things that I asked, that I later cut out of the video, was I explained that a lot of my research revolved around a town called Sungo, or Sungori, or Sungori Sungo, and that a lot of defectors, well, several of them, have given testimony that people were living in Sungori or Sungori Sungo, and specifically off the railroad tracks at a place called Mandalari, which is just a little bit east of Pyongyang, not too far, just up the river. And Mr. Lee said he didn't believe that was the case because he remembered these POWs were held north of the capital in the mid to late 1990s. So if he was lying, it would be very easy for him to just retort back to me and say, yeah, they were where you mentioned, just east of the capital, but he didn't. So he's sticking to his story, which as far as I know, he hasn't ever told before, really.
I was hearing some about how Mr. Kim saw a U.S. prisoner of war in North Pyongan in North Korea in 1971, and was wondering if I could ask some more about that.
스미스 존인지 존 스미스인지는 잘 모르겠는데
He cannot remember the exact name, but he was Smith John or John Smith. 잠시만요. So he got caught in 1953 in 거기 장진이 어디예요?
이
평안
아니 한경남도
the northern part of 함경도, which calls 장진 area.
고토령 전투
고토령 전투? 그러면은 이게
많이 알려지. 미군하고 중공군이 제일 싸움을 많이 했던 장소에서 거기서 포로 갔다.
So there were lots of war or conflict between China and U.S. soldiers at that area.
고토령 전투.
Which calls 고토령, and he captured it there and then moved to the Pyongan province. It's northern part of Pyongan province, and
태천군
is Taechan area, and
공군 비행장.
it was the place was in the airport of Air Force Airport. At that time, he was at the school of getting a driving license. So they have to take the 1-year course, and he was in that school. So in North Korea, there are no American. You cannot see any Americans in the North Korea.
처음에는 신기하고.
At the first time, he was so surprised to see the American soldier was translator, which translate the documents, also the verbal. At that time, it was 1971. So, but the American soldiers were kept during the Korean War. So it's been a long time that he stayed in North Korea, so he could speak a little bit of Korean. So he asked him, where are you from? And he was answering, I'm from America. And he was doing the work with a shovel. After he caught, he went to the prison for the U.S. soldier, and then he went to the airport.
Some of the information I've been researching makes me think this man's name is John Sherman Smith from cavalry from Ohio. Did he ever mention where he was from or say what he looked like?
He was about 40 years, middle of 40 or less than that years old.
Did he have any tattoos or birthmarks or balding hair?
뭐 몸에 문신이라든지.
그건 모르는데 키가 작고.
He was kind of small.
그리고 이 체격 어쨌든 북한에서는 잘 먹지 못하니까.
Small height and short height and very skinny. He was. He looked similar as Russian.
Okay. And did he ever mention where he was from, if you can remember?
어디 지역에서 살다 왔다 뭐
그런
그것까지는.
거는 미국이라는 자체를 내가 모르기 때문에 얘기해도 모르지.
Because he didn't know anything about America, so even though he said that he cannot remember. In his situation, he cannot say anything that he wants to say. He's not supposed to.
그때도 나이가 있기 때문에 내가 분명하게 아는 거는 여기 가족 있냐니까 장가를 못 간 거.
So he asked him, did you get married? And he said no. He doesn't have any families in North Korea.
Whatever happened to him, and do you believe that there's any POWs who are still alive in North Korea?
Maybe in 1998, they could survive, but after that year, there were a huge starving, because there are only two choices: noodles or rice. But as an American, you should eat bread or meat, but there are no such things like that. So he thinks that he's pretty sure that he could not survive those hard times.
And one final question. Talking to a POW activist group, there was another man, they never mentioned his last name, but he said he saw John Smith, and he also saw two South Korean POWs. He lived in a village with them. Is that true?
He saw many South Korean POW, but not in that airport area. But because he was very low ranking at that time, so he could not see other.
Can you name the town where they were kept?
Where they kept?
Yeah, like if there was a rescue mission where you would want to look at.
Where they moved? I mean.
Are they still kept in like a prison camp? And if so, where would that be?
He met him when he went to the practice, some kind of military practice, and the soldier was outside of the fence of airport area. There were a fence, but he saw the soldier near the river, which is outside of the fence.
I mean, any South Korean POWs of Korea, where are they kept?
그러니까 6.25 때 이 국군 포로가 제일 많은 게 검덕광산. 그러니까 한경남도 단천시 검덕광산.
The biggest place was in southern part of 함경도, 단천 area.
검덕광산.
Which calls 검덕 coal mine area was the biggest one.
그 다음에 황해북도 송림 제철소. 황해북도 송림 제철 그 씨랑 녹이고 하는데.
So the second biggest one was
황해북도.
Northern part of 황해도 and 송림 city and
황해 제철소.
황해 working place. Iron work
Last
place.
question, I promise.
근데 그렇게 알면 돼요. 제일 그 탄광, 광산, 응? 이런 일반인들이 북한 사람들이 가기 싫은 일을 시키는 장소에 보냈다고 하면.
So the place that North Koreans doesn't want to work, the POWs are sent to that place.
Is this and one final question? I keep getting the names Sungori, Sungo, or Mandalri, east of Pyongyang. Is this near there? At a coal mine there?
Can you say that again?
Sungori.
Sungori.
Sungo.
Sungo.
승오리,
숭오리.
승호리,
승호리.
평양시 저기 승호구역 승호리라는 데는 탄광.
It's coal
거기도
mine.
많아요.
승호리.
승호리, 삼등 탄광, 흑령 탄광, 강동 탄광. 예, 거기 이 승호리가 맞아요.
네, 승호리, 삼등 탄광, 광명 탄광.
아니, 흑령 탄광.
아, 잠시만요. 승호리. 네.
그다음에 이 삼등 탄광,
삼등 탄광,
흑령 탄광,
흑령
탄광,
탄광,
강동 탄광,
강동
탄광.
탄광. So,
거기 승호리 지역이니까.
그 이건
평안남도.
평안남도.
강동군. 거기서 조금 더 가면 승호리.
So it's southern part of Pyongan province, and the area calls Gangdong-gun, and Seunghori, and the coal mine name is Samdeung coal mine, Hungyeong coal mine, and Gangdong coal mine.
Kim Young-hwa, who is the leader of North Korean Refugees Human Rights Association, quite a mouthful for an NGO, he's the one that uses the current to carry those rice bottles up to the north. And as far as we can tell, they're making it pretty far up there because they put a GPS tracker on one of them and it made it almost all the way to China along the coast. So we know the current's bringing them pretty far up. He didn't himself express to me, but other members of his group all expressed the same opinion, that Mr. Moon, who is now the president of South Korea, is more socialist leaning. He's more left wing. And he therefore desires some sort of reunification that sort of capitulates to the North Korean government. He's a socialist and they're worried that they're going to fall underneath communist hands. And one of the things that led them to worry is Mr. Moon's negotiations with Kim Jong-un and his calling off of all of the official things that send aid to the north. So there's no more official bottle launches, there's no more official balloon launches, and he's discouraging them. He's discouraging these exile groups. And when you lived in North Korea for decades, and now you see the president of South Korea, who's newly elected, shaking hands with the person that you view responsible, who is responsible, of course you're going to be anti-North Korean government, but now you're also anti-South Korean government. So these people view themselves, and I view them as dissidents against both North and South Korea. They want a reunification, but they want a reunification on the South's terms. And I think that's a good idea. I don't think you should be shaking hands with a dictator. I chose to start working with Mr. Kim's group after I saw a video online showing them spreading their bottles to the north. And yeah, in the comments section you had a bunch of idiots saying, oh, you're littering the ocean, you're throwing garbage in the ocean, as if that justified not helping people who were starving to death. But anyway, it was only after I had already sent a few emails and been in contact with them that I asked them about the POW issue. You know, Americans being up there and the rumors of that. And Mr. Kim himself doesn't really speak English, but through one of the contacts and translators, he said, "It's interesting you'd ask. Back in 2015, we had another POW group, who I'm assuming is the POW Investigative Project, ask the same thing. And they sent me a 15-minute long video of Mr. Kim explaining what he saw and even showing on a map where these POWs were. And he claimed that he saw one in 1971. He was a fairly high-ranking man in the military by the time he defected, in charge of public transport, the rail stations, railroads, and when an accident happens in a place like North Korea, it's never blamed on just natural circumstances. It was never just faulty rails. It's always some supposed sabotage or supposed terrorist incident against their leader, their Yuchi ideology. So they came for Mr. Kim as a sacrificial lamb, and he escaped initially to the village just next to him. And he got his gun and escaped to over the not the DMZ over the Yalu River with China, and he lived for a few years, I believe, in China, and lived under the radar, grew a beard, but he kept his gun with him, and he made his way down hundreds and hundreds of miles to the border with Vietnam. And when he went across the border, a guard caught him, and he pulled his gun on the guard. They weren't expecting him to have a gun, so he escaped another few days, but he was eventually taken in and put to a prison. And when he found out, I believe he said he was in this prison for 2 years, but when they found out that he was in jail, he managed to escape by beating a guard, and he made it to a boat which took him to Seoul. And the policy that South Korea has with North Korean defectors is, because they don't view North Korea as its own legitimate government, they give all of these North Koreans citizenship by default. So they say, if you make it to South Korea, we'll give you a home, we'll give you an education, and we'll give you citizenship. And this also somewhat leads to North Korean defectors being viewed in a negative light by people in the South, because it's seen almost as the refugee situation, and the same excuses that people have for not giving Middle Eastern refugees any sort of social status, because they see them as freeloaders and uneducated and possibly dangerous or spies. So these refugees tend to a lot of times stick to themselves, and there tends to be some infighting within other refugee groups trying to gain a foothold and get attention. But what I've been told is that Mr. Kim doesn't really succumb to this infighting, and Mr. Kim is basically doing all of this just from the goodness of his heart. So he's not demanding money, he's not making all these false claims, and he's not staging public stunts.
I heard, even back then when I was in North Korea, I heard that there were a couple of American soldiers in the North Korean soil, but I was not able to see myself until I met that guy.
근데 뭐 여기저기서 지인들을 통해서 이야기는 들었는데 제가 직접 겪지 않은 일이기 때문에
that's not what I experienced, so it's not for me to
존
share.
스미스인가 스미스 존인가 한 분은 분명히 제가 목격을 한 첫 미국인이었기
and that was
때문에
my first American person I've ever met there.
그 장소가 지금 여기
So I can show you the location or explain it with the map.
여기가 이거 태천 비행장 이게
this is where Taechon Air Base is
요 태천
Taechon.
저희가 정주군 고현리라는 게
Cheongju, this is where he's pointing right now.
여기서
From here.
영포나무 이건 요 정도의 고현이라고 있는데 그 여기로 해서 이게 도로가 상당히 이게 지금
for vehicles to pass.
태천호고 그리고 이 사람이 잡힌 데는 여기에 장진호라는 게 이겁니다.
장진호, actually, this is 장진호.
여기서 잡혀가지고 이쪽으로 육로로 오다 보니까 여기는 뭐 엄청 산세가 깊기 때문에 그 뭐 해방된 것도 모르고 아마 이 장진호라고 하게 되면 미군의 많은 미군 병사들이 여기서 희생되고 80년대까지도 미군 소총들까지도 막 발견됐던 장소가 이 장소.
Even that location where found the weapons that they used before in the battle. So that was a very fierce battle back in the days. Changjin, and probably that's a famous location in the history.
그만하지.
I'm here with the border of North Korea to discuss some of the info on the POWs that we've found over the last few weeks. I contacted Mr. Kim Young-hwa, who works for a missionary group. He's a defected North Korean Army soldier. And he provided info on a man named John Smith, whom he saw in 1971. I consider this the most accurate evidence that we've found so far because he gave us names, locations, and dates. Mr. Young is a respected figure in the defector community. From this information, I've tracked down the person I believe John Smith to be. Young-hwa stated that he and a group of friends were based at Taechon Air Base in 1971 in order to get licensed on vehicle operation. There they met a man taller than other personnel, wearing a military uniform with no insignia, no patches, and no name tags. He was performing minor tasks such as sweeping, painting, and translating parts that came in English-labeled boxes to the airfield. Nervous to talk at first, Young got him to speak and made 3 important observations. Firstly, his name was either John Smith or Smith John. Second, he appeared to be about 40 years old as of 1971. And third, he was captured in the early stages of a battle with the Chinese Communist forces, not the North Koreans. This is important. Younghwa believes that this battle took place at Chosun Reservoir, a decisive communist victory. However, I checked the database through the DPAA of missing soldiers, and Chosun Reservoir had no John Smiths go missing during it. Disregarding this, John Smith, the Private John Sherman Smith, matches his description perfectly. In late October 1950, Private John Sherman Smith from the 3rd Battalion, 8th Regiment of the 1st Cavalry was pushing with his men into North Korea. They pushed into Unsan, which had a division of South Korean soldiers which were overrun with North Koreans, and with Chinese rather. He was part of a division that saw very little action. They were guarding the southern end of the valley. They were on reserve. Unfortunately, they provided rear support to the battalions, and the Chinese quickly surrounded and defeated us at Unsan. So as our battalions left from 1st Cavalry, his division was in charge of preventing the communists from pursuing. It matches Younghwa's description of him being caught in the midst of a large battle, but by surprise. It was an ambush. As the rest of them pushed out, it left his division almost unprotected, and the communists surrounded, and dozens, if not hundreds of men went missing or were murdered. The DPAA says that John Smith has no new information on file, but when Mr. Younghwa defected, he brought this information first to the army, then to the embassy. Neither of them were interested, and the information should be updated to say that there is new information, but that the leads can't be followed. They have lied on the DPAA website. There is new information, they're ignoring it, and they're subverting it in order to maintain peace talks with the North Koreans. Because if there was information regarding POWs remaining alive in the North, including POWs that they brought from Vietnam to the North sometime in the 1980s, before we opened up relations with Vietnam, if this issue were to be brought to the table, negotiations would crumble with the North. So the DPAA, the DOD, they push all of these facts under the rug. I believe Mr. Younghwa may have falsely remembered the Battle of Chosun Reservoir because it was such an important battle for the North. It was their version of Valley Forge. It was their Battle of the Bulge. It's a very popular battle, but I believe this is why he misremembered it, because the name was so popularly ingrained in the culture. The Battle of Unsan actually took place about 30 miles away from Taechung Air Base, which is where he was sighted in North Pyongan province. Also of important note is his age. The other John Smith, there's only 2 John Smiths that went missing in the Korean War. One was a master sergeant, so by 1971 he would have appeared older than 40. Private John Smith would obviously be younger. Being from the Ohio Regiment, he would have enlisted around 1920, and he would be in his 40s as of 1971 because the war happened in the 1950s. Younghwa stated that the American Army redirected his reports to the embassy and took no interest. Smith was still listed as deferred, meaning no information has come about that would shed light on his case, which is completely untrue because he made this report. I believe the issue is being pushed under the rug so as not to stall ongoing peace negotiations.
I'm here at the headquarters of Radio Free North Korea, which closely works with the bottle launch groups and Mr. Kim, who I've already interviewed, but it also has separate NGOs tied to it. One of these groups is known as the North Korean People's Liberation Front, which I am very interested in because a man who works for the radio station here, Mr. Choi Jong-hoon, is the head of the North Korean People's Liberation Front. Suzanne from the radio station said that I could connect to, or at least pass along questions to Mr. Hoon through Mr. Kim or through the radio station. Jason, who's a spokesperson for the bottle launch group, recommends that I contact the radio station or Kim Sung-min, which I am here to do. The radio station operates on the border and along the river with China and is a part of the Defense Forum Foundation. This foundation has as a subset the Korean POW Rescue Committee, which works to repatriate POWs from the Korean War on the Republic of Korea side. Dozens of South Korean POWs have returned, the first of which was Lieutenant Chang Ho-cho, who spoke on Capitol Hill with the Foundation in 2005, alongside another POW who escaped after the 1990s, Mr. Chang Suk Kim, who escaped in the year 2000. The Foundation points out that of 82,491 POWs, not even 15,000 were returned. Mr. Cho pointed out testimony of Oi Young-il, who escaped in 1953, reporting 3,000 Republic of Korea prisoners and 300 U.S. GIs at a camp in Samgori-Sunggo village, Gurun, Kangdong County. This testimony was ignored in favor of peace. I'm just interested in the issue of American prisoners of war who may have been kept involuntarily, not defectors, in North Korea. And this POW group here believes that they were also brought over from Vietnam around the 1990s when we were opening up relations with Vietnam, which Bill Clinton did in 1993. So we are kind of disregarding the POWs who defected, the people like the one big fat guy that defected. What was it? He was an American who defected, but these are people who we believe they just never traded us, and they kept them because they could speak Chinese. And I have spoken today with the Bottle Launch Group. Mr. Kim saw a POW in 1971, and one of the South Korean fishermen there also saw or heard stories of Americans that didn't want to be there anymore. And Mark Souter, who's an Army Special Forces officer, gave me that and asked me to relay it to the radio station because we're looking now for more than just testimony. He says if he finds evidence of pictures, DNA, hair from either the POWs or from their kids, because he can confirm the DNA with that, that he would be able to forward that to the news, because he's a lawyer and he doesn't trust American government to find the POWs because we push it under the rug.
So, like, we just find the evidence in the North Korea, right?
Yes, or anybody that listens to the radio station, because this is a secure encrypted communication, and you can check it if you'd like, because I don't know how secure it is because I don't work for them, but they're looking for any kind of concrete evidence because they have dozens of reports of people who saw Americans. And in fact, Mark Souter, who is the Army Special Forces officer, gave me documents that mentioned Sunggo and Sungori and Sungori-Sunggo, all these villages, the same kind of name, east of Pyongyang. And in talking with Mr. Kim earlier today, the name came up again, that it was holding POWs, South Korean POWs from the 1950s. And I've got the names of several villages in his testimony.
So you need evidence they're still alive, or like they used to live in Pyongyang?
Yeah, east of it in a place, Sunggo or Mandalri, there's a POW, a coal mine there.
Yeah, this kind of story is quite new to me. I heard about it before, but like, yeah, it's very new. I even like have much information on this.
There's their website. It lists different countries where they believe POWs may have been kept, and their theory is in Vietnam especially, there was a separate prisoner camp system for people that had been broken under interrogation, that didn't want to return home. So rather than stay in Vietnam, they sent them to places like Korea. And I mean, they're not being kept in bamboo cages or tortured every day. They're just living there, but their family has no idea.
So we are a radio station and we have radio service to North Korea. So what can we do exactly for this, like, to help you, this kind of thing?
So Mark Souter is saying the main evidence he wants is any kind of pictures, DNA, either from the person or their children, because the children would be helpful because we would know that they had a family in North Korea. And this is not from defectors, this is unwilling POWs. So not the ones that appeared in the movies. and any kind of photos or because all the reports we have so far are I saw someone who was tall and white with who looked like an American, but they can never give a name or a unit or a town or anything. We need something that can't be denied.
So we need to get it from the North Korea, right? Yeah, people from the North Korea can only testify this kind of thing, right?
Or Mark Souter, that Army officer, he believes that if they have some kind of internet access or a proxy, any kind of pictures, and I know that might be.
I mean, we sometimes communicate with people in North Korea, but mostly only in the border area between China and North Korea. Yeah, like they don't have any. We don't have any. Like in North Korea, they don't have any access to the internet. It's not allowed. They have
Internet.
Yeah, most of them have cell phone, smartphone, but it's not connected to the internet, really. So.
Well, I didn't kind of expect that many of them, sadly, would have any access to it. But one of the men that we were talking with today from the bottle launch group said, for example, that there was a POW alive in 1971, and officially they returned them in 1953, but he was in near Unsan, Taichung Air Base in North Pyongan province, near the border, and that it's possible that others were kept near the border.
Mainly we do is just radio broadcast, so I think we can. Do you want us to like add this kind of information in the radio program?
It might be asking a lot, but if there is a way to just say that there is a group that believes that Americans were left behind for a few decades, and I understand it's not like. I think I understand that there's not much access to the internet there, and it would be very hard. But just if the opportunity ever came out, because a lot of the defectors that I've spoken with, they have the stories of Americans from decades after.
Okay. I think we can do like deliver messages about this. Like that is not that difficult thing for us. That like informing people in North Korea, like our target audience, that there are still people who believe that, like American people who believe that their family or their friends are still living in North Korea, and they are like, So yeah, that's what we can do easily, and like we are still not sure that if we can get the real information, like physical information, like get this kind of information from North Korea.
They're interested in any kind of any information, so any testimony or anything. But what they really want is physical information, because what our government does, we have an office called the GPAA, which looks for the remains of people and for POWs. But the POW investigative project is private citizens, because we believe that if our government found info that people were still alive there or that their children were there, that would hurt peace negotiations. So they classify all the reports of live sightings immediately. So this organization is run by special forces and a lot of officers and lawyers who collect it separately from our military, because they believe that we would just keep it quiet. And actually, one of the workers at this radio station, I believe his name Choi Jung-hoon.
Choi Jung-hoon, used to work here, not now.
Well, he said he sighted a POW in 2002 at Aplock River College, and he matched. This was the location where one of the defectors was, a willing person, but he didn't match the description. So he believes that he saw a POW. That's what he said to the POW investigative group.
What was the name of the airport that Mr. Kim Yong said?
Taichung It's north of Unsan.
종이가 안 돼가지고. 네.
그래서 이런 포로들이 평안남도 강동군 승포리 3등 탄광, 흥령 탄광, 강동 탄광 등지에서 이런 포로 남한 쪽 포로나 아니면은 미군 포로들이 이렇게 노역 일 했었다고 그런 정보 그리고 회장님께서 어떤 공항 인근에서 훈련하시다가 미국인을 보셨대요. 존 스미스라고 하는 그런 미국인을 보셨다는 그 증언까지.
그러니까 이 사람들은 미군 포로만 관심하는 게 아니고 국군 포로도 관심이 있는 건가?
Are you interested about whole POW or only American?
Whole. So
Whole,
Republic
네.
of Korea,
네.
British.
네.
그래서 우리한테 요구하는 게 뭔지 물어봐.
그러니까 결국에는 이제 이런 메시지들을 방송에서 또 알려주면 좋을 거고 아직도 이런 것들이 이런 사실을 믿는 미국인들이 있다는 거, 그걸 노력하고 있는 사람들이 있다는 거 이런 것들을 메시지로 주면 좋겠다는 것과
방송으로.
예.
네, 뭐
그리고
증언이든 아니면
I
증언.
really do care about the people of North Korea and the human rights there. But I also believe that an easy way to get the world to care about it would be to show evidence that we left people behind for 30 years and that they were treated poorly or forgotten by us. That would make the world look at North Korea.
않고 있다고 하는 거.
we've been broadcasting the issue of Japanese abductees in North Korea.
Oh,
Yeah. So like we have kind of a relationship with people in Japan, the abductees family members. So we've been working with them for especially we broadcast programs about this. So this issue, we talk about this issue and we let them know we are still remembering the people in North Korea, Japanese people in North Korea. So this kind of things, I think he thinks this issue like a little bit similar because
It is.
they're like revealing their like North Korean regime's crime, like abduction crime. So we focus on this. So yeah.
그리고 국군 포로도 하고 있고 했고 일단 돌아가면서 하는데.
We also deal
미국
with
것도 이렇게 요구한 이상 우리가 모른다 할 수는 있는데 지금 시간적으로 우리가 1시간밖에 못해요. 만약 국무부 지원이 이제 돼서 4시간 방송을 하면 그때 이 정도 가지고는 안 되고 충분히 우리가 내용을 잡아서 미군 것도 한번 다뤄보게. 국군 포로는 하고 있어 이미 했어요. 그래서 돌아가면 로테이션을 하니까.
we already did deal with the Korean abductees, like Korean POW maybe. Yeah. We already did it, and we are currently now broadcasting 1 hour every day, and we're preparing expanding broadcast hour to 4 hours, funded by the State Department of the United States. And if we start 4-hour program, daily program, I think we can make a new program focus on this US POW issue. So if we can get some more information to make broadcast program only for this, like enough information about this, like I think it's material for making broadcasting programs.
So 2 Americans in Pyongyang. What are their names?
Their name, they only have Korean name. 한국 이름밖에 없네요. They're
북한에 사는
미국인인데.
미국 국적자니까.
Yeah. 그러면 실제로
Maybe they are
백인들이에요.
Korean
아니
American.
그거 모르지
그건 모르는
지금.
거죠.
But they
모르는
only
They're
have
U.S. citizen, but we don't know their like Caucasian or Asian.
Was the birth date around the 1950s, 40s?
70,
1970s?
yeah, and 1963.
Well,
They are male and
고향은 강원도 분광군 이포리니까 내 생각에 여기가 이 사람의 아버지가 미군이었을 수 있고 그 자손이 강원도 이포리가 1군단 지역이거든.
네.
거기서 났을 수 있지.
The fourth guy is born in Gangwon province, and he thinks there's a possibility of his father was American.
지금 사는 곳은 이거란 말이에요.
Currently living at 이게 in 평양 동대원 구역이면 이게
평양시 중심구역이지.
중심구역이요.
중심은 아니지만
그 동쪽이라서 동대원인가요?
아 그렇지.
그 동쪽.
대동강을 중심으로 한 동쪽.
They currently live in east side of Daedonggang, like east side of Pyongyang.
그러니까 그 사람들 공개된 사람들이지.
There in Pyongyang, like in certain district, there are 3 Americans currently living there, and they are all like 배우들인 거죠. They are all movie actors. They showed up in North Korean movie, like yeah, their role as American like Western people. 그러면 주로 안 좋은 역할을 맡았죠.
니는 역할을 하지.
Or American role, like the wicked, bad American role. Yeah, some of them were born in Japan.
And these are all Japanese?
Yeah, Japanese citizen.
일본 사람들은 꽤 많은데 미국은 이제부터 2명.
And they were also having a North Korean name.
These video clips were taken on my visit to Radio Free North Korea, RFNK, and it's sad to realize the foothold that leftists and student groups and communists have in South Korea. They've had to move their radio station from the city center to the outskirts and put it in a high-rise apartment building because they were being attacked and assaulted by left-wing students. To hear this, just it's sickening. It would be almost like the Holocaust is going on and people are attacking the embassies of the exile governments in London or something like that. It shouldn't be allowed to happen. But anyway, walking in their front doors, you can see a bunch of staff members, and they're all North Korean exiles. And they all have, out of the goodness of their hearts, started this radio station which broadcasts to North Korea. I'm a little bit worried because in the video they seem to think that I had the impression that many North Koreans had access to the internet and they could just send pictures and stuff to us, which obviously not true. They're very cut off from the rest of the world, but along the borders they do have phones from China, and people who are close to the border can pick up Chinese cell phone towers, and with that they send reports back and forth. And even on the radio station sometimes you can hear them whispering and saying what it's like living in North Korea, and they are able to communicate with an audience in Seoul or wherever you tune into Radio Free North Korea. In his office I met with Kim Song-min, and I hope I didn't waste too much of his time because I found out later he has a very serious sickness right now, and I wish him the best in recovering from this. But he was influenced by these broadcasts from the South, which we've now ceased doing because, again, Mr. Moon is a socialist president. But he was influenced by foreign broadcasts in 1996 because of his position. He was a policy expert, very high-ranking officer in North Korea, and he was tasked with analyzing the broadcasts. And they actually managed to sway his own opinion, and he left in 1996, again, during the whole famine. And the translation of what he was saying was being done by his assistant. He was supposedly the only non-defector who was working at the radio station. So they showed me this computer system. And the computer system they had gotten through, it was implied, some sort of espionage, some sort of spying, and the system had the names of 3 million people in it. 3 million citizens that had lived in Pyongyang. Now, of these names, it gave their phone numbers, their dates of birth, and their addresses. And it also sorted them by nationality. So we saw that there were 3 Americans living in Pyongyang, because we know there was one defector who had 3 children in North Korea. I'll put up some information on that shortly, but we knew he had 3 children and they were born to 2 separate wives. And if these people turn out to be from different dates of birth, then we have some very easy information that there are Americans that were born within the time frame that these POWs could have been alive in North Korea. And if they don't match up with this defector, this willing defector, then we know for a fact that somebody else was left up there for decades. So this would be the first concrete proof that we have from North Korea itself. So the willing defector to North Korea, I heard it from one of the Americans who worked with the North Koreans at the Joint Security Area. His name was James Dresnach. Now, I'm quoting the guy who told me, but Dresnach was a real asshole. He had a habit of beating the shit out of his fellow defectors, just really for no reason. And of course he denies this because he's lived in North Korea for the rest of his life, and he just died recently. But I think they called him part of the dummy crew because they took a real long time to learn the North Korean dialect. And they basically, with defectors, they would keep you inside of a hotel room and not let you see the outside world for several years while you read Supreme Leaders pamphlets and were educated in Yuchi. And he would just beat his buddies. Anyway, his first two sons were born to a Romanian, probably an abductee, and this was in the years 1980 and 1982. And something happened to her. I believe she died of a disease. So his last son was born to a Korean woman in 2001. None of the names match the ones in the computer system at Radio Free North Korea, and none of the dates do either. So this is pretty much definitive proof that another American was alive in North Korea sometime after the war, decades after the war, decades after they were supposed to have been released in 1953. Kang Chol-won is probably one of the most respected figures in the North Korean exile community that I met when I was there. He wrote a bestseller book, Aquariums of Pyongyang, which is a fascinating read and very sad if you ever get the chance to read it. And he even met with George Bush. He made a stir when he managed to really start talking about the things that happened to him when he was there. So the deal with Mr. Kang Chol-won is that he came from a well-respected family in Pyongyang. And they were high-ranking members of the party. I believe his grandfather was in charge of the grocery stores. However, they moved to Japan for several years, and they were still loyal to the North Korean regime at the time. But living in Japan automatically put them under surveillance. So when they came back from their few years living in Japan, the North Korean government looked at them and immediately threw them in jail. They didn't level the accusation directly against his grandfather. If I remember right, Korean television said that his older brother was working for the police in Tokyo, but really it was just an accusation against his grandfather. So his grandfather was sent to Sungori concentration camp, which is, again, in the village of Sungori, I believe, which is what we've been talking about as possibly holding POWs, because it's the most feared camp complex. And once you get sent there, you really aren't allowed to leave. And the rest of them were sent to Yodok. Now, Kang Chol-won, I believe he was sent at, yes. So in 1977, Kang Chol-won was sent to Yodok with the rest of his family, and he was only 9 years old. POW Investigative Project received reports from Sungori, which is where his grandfather was, so I started asking him some questions about Sungori. He said that he had seen 2 other people from Sungori. One of them was later defected to the south, but he was only sent to Sungori to send him a message, to show him how terrible the conditions were there. Because the man who was sent there was a film director, and he made an escape attempt, and the government really wanted his services, so they took him to this camp just to show him the terrible living conditions, essentially as a warning. But he also met somebody else who worked there. So thank you again for meeting with me, and I'm working with the POW Investigative Project, who believe that there are Americans either in Korea, in North Korea, from the Vietnam War, or the children from the Korean War, and they believe that they're being held in Sungo or other areas of the country, but specifically Sungori or Sungo. And can you tell me any of the rumors that you've heard about this camp specifically?
방금 전에 질문한 거를 이제 똑같이
생존자를 제가 2명을 만난 적이 있었어요.
I have met 2 survivors from Sungori.
한 사람은 저희 친구네 아버지였고.
One was a father of my friend.
한 사람은 이제 대한민국의 유명한 영화 감독이었던 신상옥 감독.
And the other person is a very famous movie director. Is called Shin Sang-ok. He's a very famous Korean, South Korean movie director.
그 신상욱 감독은 이제 거기서 탈북하려고 막 시도하다가
Shin tried to defect. He was a South Korean who got kidnapped by the way.
그래서 잡혀가지고 김정일이가
So he was kidnapped. He was captured on his attempt to defect. So Kim Jong-il, the father of Kim Jong-un,
그래서 이 사람을 수용소에 넣은 건 아니고
he did not put him directly into the concentration camp,
그걸 보게 했어요. 공포 주려고.
but he showed him to incite some fears.
그래서 이제 그 신상욱 감독이 나보고 하는 얘기가
So Shin told me, Mr. Shin told me,
너도 수용소에 있었지만
you have been in that concentration camp.
자기가 본 거는 훨씬 더 끔찍한 것이었다고.
But what I have seen, what he said, Mr. Shin said, what I have seen, it was actually much worse than where you have been to.
근데 거기는 이제 한국 군대 출신.
And there are people like South Korean military people, for example, who are in that place.
그런 사람들은 이제 그 죽기 전에 나는 누구다 이렇게 하고 이제 자백하고 죽는 사람들도 있었대요.
And some of the people they basically exclaimed, okay, I am who, what's my name when I'm from wherever, before they're executed. Some people were saying that, so that's why they were able to recognize.
그런데 이제 외국인들은 항상 이제 특별하게 이제 그 분리시키기 때문에.
But usually with foreigners, with foreign people who are confined, they usually separate them out wherever they are confined.
그래서 이제 직접 같이 살아본 사람은 없는데.
So I don't think there are like many people who have lived with these foreign people that much.
외국인들이 있었다는 증언들은 꽤 있었어요.
But we do have probably several testimonials where they have seen foreigners.
근데 아마 이제 거기는 보니까 국군 포로들 중에서 이제 간첩으로 의심되는 사람들.
So prisoner of wars who have been suspected of being a spy. 한국 분들 아니면 미국 분들? 한국 분들이요?
한국.
Yeah, and these are South Korean prisoner of wars who have been suspected of being a spy.
그런 거를 봐서 이제 미국은 약간 좀 백인이기 때문에 외국인이기 때문에 섞어놓진 않았고.
So they would not really mix them up together with Americans, because you can recognize these are foreigners, people who have a little bit brighter color than the South Koreans.
그래서 이제 막 분리시켜서 아마 관리한 것 같아요.
So I think they managed them separately, but there were testimonials of these people.
Well, one of the defectors, secret police, his name was 오영남.
오영남님이랑 혹시 들어보셨죠? 탈북 그 무슨
And he mentioned that there was a facility near the railroad tracks, about 3 miles east of Sungori or Sungo. Is there a facility there?
순고리에서 한 4.8km 정도, 그러니까 3마일 정도 이렇게 동쪽으로 있는 그쪽에 어떤 시설이나 이런 게 있다라고 그분이 말씀하신 거를 이제 제가 알고 있는데, 혹시 그쪽에 그러한 시설이라든지 뭔가 있는 것 같습니까? 그쪽 순고리에서 약간 동쪽으로 조금.
순고리하고 이제 저기 평양 평성시 쪽에.
In Pyeongseong city, so I think that's the vicinity.
거기 이제 특별 그 초대소라고 하는
And there's
그런 것들이 있는데.
이제 초대소가 그 영어로 뭐라고?
초대소가 약간 별장 같으면서 약간 감금되는.
So there's a special confinement facility near in that place, Pyeongseong city.
거기 일본인 납치자들이 이제 그런 데 있었고.
And then I know that there have been people from Japan who have been kidnapped, living in this confinement.
미군 같은 경우에는 살아 있으면 이제 북한이 그거를 딜할 수 있는 아주 중요한 자원이기 때문에.
And if, for example, an American prisoner of war, if they would be there, it would be their big negotiating power for North Koreans if there was a prisoner of wars being alive.
그렇기 때문에 이제 아마 뭐 죽이거나 그런 것보다는.
So rather than killing them, it would be of a better interest of them rather than killing the American prisoner of wars, but to manage them separately, because they can leverage that when they want to use it.
So, as far as prisoners of war, South Korean or American,
그게 한국이든 미국이든 그런 전쟁 포로들이
were any held
I know no Americans, but South Korean prisoners of war in Yodok.
요덕 수용소에 또 이렇게 so are you questioning if they were held in 요덕 concentration camp?
South Korean prisoners.
그럼 요덕 수용소에 그러면은 남한 그런 에서 잡혀 들어온 사람도 안에 있을까요? 한국 사람?
네.
Yeah.
내가 아는 사람 중에 베트남 전쟁에 갔다가
One person that I know personally, firsthand, is somebody who is a South Korean who went to the Vietnam War before.
그 참전했다고 온 사람이 하나 있더라고요.
So 거기 안에 있었어요. 근데 한국 사람인데, so he was in the concentration camp. 직접 만나신 거예요. So the person that he met firsthand in the concentration camp was a South Korean person who participated in the Vietnam War.
If you can remember, do you know any of their names or descriptions?
혹시 뭐 그들의 뭐 기억나는 신상이라든지 아니면 이름이라든지 뭔가 그들의 특징을 잡을 만한 혹시 그런 게 기억이 나는 방금 말씀하신 분?
키가 좀 컸고
I think he was relatively tall. 눈이
내가 쓴 책에 아마 찾아보면 그 이름이 나올지
and it might be in the book that I have written.
네, 내가 하도 오래돼가지고.
Because it has been a long time, so of course I cannot remember his name now.
네, 이름이 뭐 정범인가 뭐.
But I think it was something like 정범 or something.
그랬던 것 같은데 이 사람이 이제 독신으로 끌려왔더라고요.
독신으로? 그러니까 결혼 안 하고
가족이 없이 그냥 혼자 끌려왔더라고요.
So yeah, he was there like without his family members. He came on his own, so he was captured on his own. So he was there.
그러니까 그런 케이스가 특이해가지고 제가 기억나죠.
And I do remember that case because it's a little bit conspicuous. It stands out in front of other stories because that occasion.
그러니까 자기가 이제 그런 자랑을 했으니까 베트남 전쟁 나갔다고.
So because he bragged that he went to the Vietnam War, so he bragged about it.
백골 무대라고.
And there's a famous Korean military 백골, which is like a white skull military infantry or however you call it, division.
As far as on a slightly different topic,
이게 좀 다른 주제인데.
do you know the people who died in these camps? Would you be able to know where the mass graves were?
I mean, of these people or people in general in that Yodok?
In general, if North Korea became a democracy, to prove the war crime that had taken place.
이제 그 수용소면 끝 골짜기 밑에다가 부동이 파놓고.
이게 그 숭고리인가요? 아까 얘기했던 숭고리가 숭고리예요. In 숭고리, at the end of where there's a little kind of valley kind of place. At the end, at the edge.
그리고 이제 북한의 그 증거를 없애기 위해서.
And North Korea, for them to erase or remove the evidence of such crime.
지금 이제 그 한북 청진에 있는 수성교화소라고 있어요.
There's a 함경북도 청진. It's a place name. 어디 무슨 수용소 무슨 수용소? 수성. That's a 수성 confinement camp.
그 숭고리가 그걸로 옮겨갔죠.
And from Sungori has been relocated to this other facility.
거기는 전부 다 화형세다 이제 화장을 하는
이제 새로운 데는 in the new place nowadays, what they try to do is, and that's probably in order to remove all their evidences, is they use what calls when you use fire to burn, incrimination. How do you say that? Cremation. So they cremate nowadays.
As far as who was held in Sungori,
숭고리에 주로 들어가는 사람들이 뭐 아까 말씀하신 부분도 있지만은 뭐 기독교인들이나 뭐 아니면은 진짜 나라에 반기를 들었거나 뭐 그런 사람도 위주인 거예요? 아니면 좀
숭고리는 이제 진짜 북한 정권이 판단하기에 아주 무거운 죄를 짓다고 판단됩니다.
악질로 이렇게 판단되는.
1급 정치범들.
So Sungori is actually even much the people who North Korean regime considers as potential or as threats. So these people are, much of a higher, let's say, classification these people are put in Sungori, because Sungori is, I think, a little bit of a notorious camp.
And you said it was relocated to, what was the name of it?
그러면 숭고리 캠프 자체는 거기에 더 이상 없고 이제 아까 말씀하신 새로운 장소로 that has been relocated so that Sungori operates no longer, but it's on the other area. 그 다른 위치가 아까 뭐라고 했죠? 새로운 청진 수성 confinement post in 청진.
This next clip is not the opinion of the POW Investigative Project, which is really what I came here to work alongside. I'm gathering reports, and I know that I don't have that big of a voice right now, so I'm handing them to the POW Investigative Project, which a lot of officers, a lot of retired policy experts, I know that they can do more with this than I do. And just to clarify, their view is just that the DPAA and the Army and the investigators on the official Pentagon level aren't really doing any work as far as live sighting reports of Vietnamese or Korean political prisoners and prisoners of war, just because it's a government agency and they don't have the time, and it's just a bunch of gridlock, and you give a job to a government agent and he'll find a way to do everything but finish the job. So these are private investigators who have a very vested interest in this. So clarifying my point about the drugs in the following video, I should say that there's many theories as to what happened with the missing POWs. The Pentagon says they all died in battle or shortly after, while activists say that they were moved around in some way to another, either to North Korea or to Laos or to some other parts of the Soviet Union. Some activists, such as the POW Investigative Project, believe that it's just government gridlock. I choose to believe that it's more convenient for us to continue our negotiations and our peace talks without this issue sort of bringing it down. And so if you don't have any definitive proof, if you don't have any DNA samples, any pictures, you can't really bring this up at the peace talks because they're kept in closed away buildings, like at Mangalore. So this is why the POW Investigative Project requires absolute definitive proof. They want photos, they want DNA, they want some sort of diplomatic documents or paperwork or passports. But Lieutenant Colonel Bo Greitz was, I believe, the most highly decorated Green Beret in the Vietnam War, and he believes that there's other powers at play, which I should bring up here. Essentially, his theory was that POWs were left in Vietnam and sent to Laos, and they were used to finance sort of extra military groups. And now in the military you have something called Black Ops. Now, groups like Army Rangers, groups like Special Forces, groups like even Navy SEALs, those are considered just special operations. But then you have black operations. And black operation groups don't technically exist. These are the guys that you'll never see them in uniform. You'll never see a rank or an insignia or a name tag. These are the guys that blur their face whenever they post photos, if they post photos, because if you're actually Black Ops, you aren't posting photos. Groups like Delta Force. And what happens is they aren't able to accept money from Congress, or they aren't able to accept money from the taxpayers to do these operations because they are not legal necessarily. So they get money from slush funds. Now, nobody really knows where these slush funds come from, but we know they have millions and millions of dollars in them. And when they want to, say, blow up an oil rig in Nicaragua or kill a politician, they take the money out of these slush funds. And it was Bo Greitz's theory that these slush funds were made, at least back in the day, from Laos, because Laos and the Golden Triangle had an unbelievable amount of heroin growing in it. And to this end, he met General Kun Sa of the Mong Thai Liberation Army, who essentially told him the same thing, that the DEA was visiting, and the DEA had no interest in destabilizing the conflict there, which was more ethnic than political. It was with the, I believe, Kun Sa was Han Chinese, and it was I think the Chin state. They were desiring independence from Myanmar, from Burma, and they were shipping off all this heroin to these slush funds and to these rebel groups in Thailand, fighting the insurgents there, and it was being used to finance all of these black ops, particularly the secret war that we had going on between the CIA and the Pathet Lao in Laos. And our allies there were the Hmong guerrillas, the native Hmong, which would be financed also by the same slush funds. He found that the DEA officials were subverting his missions because he actually did go on 3 separate rescue missions to Laos. And in several of these, you could see there was more definitive proof. There was actually photographic evidence, and it was seen from satellite photos. They would see the walking K in rice fields. And the walking K was a seer symbol. And essentially, if you were captured, taken prisoner, you would never write POW because they would never rescue you, because it would be very, very easy for a Viet Cong member to write POW in a rice field and ambush the helicopter landing. So they wrote the walking K, and that symbol meant pilot or aircrew escaping and evading need help immediately. And they saw this 1982, which was almost a decade after the war ended. And then they later saw it in the 1990s. It happened outside of Sam Nu, which was the former headquarters of the Pathet Lao, which had a large cave network, which for decades after they were getting reports of live sightings from there. And it happened outside of Namarod. Now, Namarod at the time was undergoing extensive agricultural projects, and they were building a large dam north of town, which is coincidentally where the camp was said to have been. Now, Bill Greitz was outside of this camp, and he said that he was trying to rescue these POWs, and he was within sight of it. And he got a radio next to him, and Voice of America in Laos starts basically spilling the beans on exactly where he is.
And so, on the first occasion, I've already mentioned, Voice of America, we were about 7 kilometers from our target. This is called the attack position. I had 250 Lao guerrilla that were well armed. I've only done this 100 times. In Westmoreland's book, one of the stories is how we were able to recapture a U-2 spy plane that had been taken by the communists, and they had it. Now, that's almost impossible. But there is nothing, and so maybe you're beginning to relate on how I can have such optimism. When you go into an enemy encampment for the first 15 minutes, you win, no matter how few you are, how many they are. Then they begin to scratch their heads after they've all fled and say, wait a minute, why are we running? We've got 10,000 people here. And so they turn back around, and you got to be ready to withdraw. Well, that's all we needed, was about 15 minutes. Again, I've only done it about 100 times. And so we were geared, and then at 1900 hours, 7 p.m., it was getting dark in the jungle, and you could hear Yankee Doodle Dandy play. That's because Voice of America broadcasts at 7 p.m. in Laos, and all of the good freedom-fighting Lao want to hear the truth, right? So they're tuning in to Voice of America. Well, they heard that night, quote, Green Beret Commander Bo Greitz is leading 15 American Special Forces in a raid to rescue U.S. prisoners of war at Namarot and Supone. Namarot was our primary target, Supone was our alternate target. That was in Laos. The general who commanded those troops, Kambu Pimasen, came to me and said, Colonel, why is your own country informing our enemies that we are about to raid them? The Vice President knows on good authority that Kun Sa, the world's largest, most heinous drug criminal, has 5 American prisoners of war. And the CIA, the Defense Intelligence, and Drug Enforcement has no means for infiltrating his inner sanctum to find out if this is true or not. We were wondering if you might consider the mission. Do you think somebody was trying to get rid of me?
General Kun Sa, you are recognized by world leaders as being the overlord of the Golden Triangle, from which more heroin comes than any other place on the earth. When I was first here in 1986, in cooperation with the White House, you gave me an offer to take back to President Reagan. That offer was to stop 900 tons of heroin and opium in 1987 from going into the Western world. You also offered to expose corrupt U.S. officials. We took your offer back to the United States. We turned it over to the White House, and we received no interest.
It must be remembered that we are not the genesis of the heroin problem. it did not come into being because of Khun Sa. It was here, in the regions hundreds of years before Khun Sa was born. It was the British that exploited cultivation and passed laws to protect distribution of opium that addicted East Asia. During the French Indochina era, drugs continued to be used for political and commercial advantage by foreign interests. The American CIA colonel, Edward G. Lansdale, reported in July 1953 to his superiors in Washington, D.C., that the French military had bought up the entire 1953 opium harvest on orders of the French commander-in-chief, General Raoul Celan. The opium was flown to Saigon for sale and export. Throughout the U.S. war in Vietnam, heroin production was accelerated to help finance CIA mercenary expansion campaigns in Laos and Cambodia. It was further used to destroy the will of the American people at home and on the battlefields. Today, the operation remains the same. Only a few of the names have been changed as people have died or been promoted.
That gave license to the CIA to begin dealing in illegal narcotics as a way of paying for operations that we couldn't get appropriated through Congress. Oh boy, and so there it goes. Well, one last thing on our prisoners. This is May of 1990. There's a person by the name of Harriet Isom. We don't have an ambassador in Laos. She's our charge d'affaires. Harriet Isom made this statement about our prisoners. She says, "You should be aware that there is a greater destiny for our foreign policy in Asia, and the prisoners of war are expendable in the pursuit of that policy, particularly when it comes to an undeclared war." Who didn't declare the war? It certainly doesn't fall upon the men who put on a uniform.
For about 3 years, people have told me that the whole POW situation was actually being undermined by U.S. government officials involved in drug trafficking.
There is rumor that
이런 루머가 있는데
there are use of South Korean prisoners and American prisoners to harvest opium to generate revenue for the North Korean regime.
What's opium? What's opium?
Opium, heroin, drugs.
Ah,
like in the fields.
drugs.
Yes, like poppy flowers.
So the question is for them to sort of grow and harvest
yes, if the Americans
drugs.
were going, or if there's any sort of corruption with drugs, where the people involved take money from drug farming.
So your question now is if there is a South Korean involvement in North Korea?
Sorry, no, if any of the prisoners at all are involved in drug harvest.
Okay. So from the mid-80s, I think that's the opium, what you said.
그때부터 이제 북한의 그 산속에 있는 농장에서 재배하기 시작했어요.
They started to grow that in the mountains of North Korea in the mid-80s.
수용소도 이제 거기도 이제 아주 깊은 산속이다 보니까.
And the concentration camp is also very deep. It's deep in the mountains.
그 깊숙한데 이제 그 마약 앞에 농장이 이제 많이 있었죠.
So there are actually quite many of such farms for these opiates.
이게 수용소만 있었던 게 아니고.
So it's not just the concentration camp itself.
내가 여독군 전체에 이제 그 앞에 맛이 꽤 있었어요.
So in this Yodok, not only in the camp but in the vicinity and the surroundings, there were quite a lot of this opium growing fields. Yeah.
그리고 이제 매 군마다 뭐가 있냐면 그 아편 그 진액을 뽑아서 그래서 이제 1차 가공을 해가지고.
And that's what they do in these locations is also they extract from this opium or this drug.
그 제약 공장이 있는데 제약 공장에서는 이제 1차 가공된 액기스 시커멓게 된 액기스.
Yeah, so they use this extract in the extract of this drug in a facility.
엑스가 모아지면 이제 라진 제약으로 다 모아준 가지고 이렇게 안전한 가공을 하는 거죠.
So they process it. So not only form it, but then they process it, the extracts of it.
그래도 이제 그 북한 사람들은 이제 매 주마다 만들어진 그 제약 공장에서
And the North Koreans.
아편 엑기스를 조금씩 도덕질하는 게 제일 말하자면 이제
So
비상약으로 쓰기가
and it was easy, or it was pretty good for them to use it as a emergency medication if they can steal a little bit. You know, some of the people who work there, so they would steal and then use it as an emergency medication or for some other reasons.
저도 이제 우리 동네 제약공장 다니는 친구로부터
And I had a friend who went there. So I had received about this much, about like how his finger, he pointed his finger. So he had received from his friend before who worked there.
진짜 그런 비상약으로 뭐 설사하거나 뭐.
So that's usually when you're like diarrhea or when you are like sick. That's for that purpose, you know. I had taken it.
그런 이제 아편이 막 비상약으로 일반 서민들이 많이 쓰여졌어요.
So it was used. I'm not saying that I had taken it, but this is used for that kind of purposes, for emergency medication among the people as well.
One of the final questions, I believe, there's a theory by an American special forces officer.
미국의 이런 what's his name?
Bo Grites.
Paul Wright, right? What's
B.O. Grites.
Bo Wright. 어제 그 라이츠라고 하는 미군의 그 스페셜 포스에 있었던 사람이 말하는 그 이론이 있는데
And the theory is
그 이론이 뭐냐면
the North Korean regime
그 북한 정권이
harvests opium and heroin.
그 뭐 아편과 헤로인들을 이렇게 이제 재배해서
And sends the profits to private bank accounts.
그 이익을 이제 그런 은행에다가 이제 뭐 송금을 한답니다. 뭐
His theory is that the North Korean party members, Communist Party members,
그 이론이 뭐냐면 그 저기 북한 정권의 그 뭐 노동당의 그런 멤버들이 they use what?
Use the money from these accounts.
그들이 그 돈을 이제 사용하고 북한 정권이 당이 노동당이 그 돈을 또 사용하고.
But also that American
근데 미국
companies and special forces, they call them black ops.
그리고 또 미국에 있는 미국 회사 그리고 뭐 미국 스페셜 포스들이
that they use the money from these accounts as well, so that they
거기도 그 계좌들을 이렇게 사용하는데 그 같은 계좌인지 모르겠지만 어쨌든 같은 은행에서
so that any sort of news about Americans being held in the prison camps over there cannot be revealed, because it would also reveal the drug harvesting which sends money to America.
So you mean they send money to America? That's what you're saying?
That it's an open account that
그래서 그게 어쨌든 그 계좌로 그 검은 돈이 왔다 갔다 하는 뭐 그런 이론이 있다고 합니다. 근데 그 미국도 같이 연관이 돼 있어서 거기서 계속
And so it's an open account that it's a secret group in the military. So if you wanted them to, for example, kill a politician.
그래서 그게 미국 안에 있는 특수한 뭐 부대 같은 그런 뭐 예를 들어서 어떤 정치인을 예를 들어서 뭐 살해된다고 한다 그러면 죽인다 그러면
they would use the money from this account.
그런 그 검은 돈 계좌에 있는 것을 사용해 가지고 한다라고 하는 그런 얘기도 있어요.
Because it can't be traced.
왜냐면 추적을 할 수가 없는 그런 검은 돈이니까.
Have you heard of this theory, and do you believe there's any truth to the fact that Americans might be profiting from the drug trade in Korea?
그러한 혹시 I don't know if it goes to America or if there's a transaction between the United States and maybe North Korea through this item. But North Korean drugs.
중국이나 어떤 러시아 통해서.
But through China or Russia.
그 마피아들이 다 개입돼서 이제 그걸 감마약을 많이 사용하죠.
Mafias are very much involved and they use a lot of North Korean drugs. So they do this international crossing over. That's happening.
해상 봉쇄가 되기 전에는 이제 동남아 쪽으로, 일본 쪽으로 많이 들어가죠.
So before they used like the Southeast Asian route or like through like Japanese in that direction before they were banned by the sea. So there was a ban in the sea so that they cannot cross over that much. So that's how he believes about. I mean, it crosses over internationally, but he doesn't know whether it's with America.